If you're a sports fan, you're likely familiar with ads like these.
Bet all the stars with all your friends.
Simply pick 2 or more players and win up to 10 times your money.
And unders, win every time they throw the ball, kick the ball, dribble the ball.
If your first team doesn't work out, you can just bet on a different team.
They've made up nearly 20% of television ads this past football season. And with the passing of the largest gambling event of the year, let's take a closer look into the world of sports gambling, how it's grown so quickly, where it might be heading, and what the unintended consequences of this expansion might be.
You have now this whole new population that's engaged in this type of activity. And as a result, we're seeing problems starting to come in.
To help explain how we got here, I spoke with Kenneth Vogel, an investigative reporter with the New York Times who's been covering the extensive lobbying efforts by gambling companies.
There's no doubt, like, gambling is popular, if people want to bet on sports. I mean, they want to bet on all kinds of things, but they want to bet on sports. And there was this federal law that prevented states outside of Nevada and a few handful of minor exceptions in other states from betting on sports. And New Jersey had challenged this law multiple times unsuccessfully. It had been upheld by various courts. Eventually, they found a way to challenge it successfully.
With the federal ban stricken down, sports betting is now legal in 38 states and online casinos in 5, including Pennsylvania. With that comes more gamblers, and inevitably more problem gamblers.
2016, 17, 18, 19, something like that. We had about 1,100 calls for help come in. And then, like I mentioned, last year we had, we topped out around 3,000. So it's really kind of, it's been eye-opening just to see some of the shifts.
This is Josh Ercol, the executive director of the Council on Compulsive Gambling of Pennsylvania, the organization that handles the 1-800-GAMBLER line.
It's frightening for us because we do see a lot of situations that change. We have seen the highest call volume since sports betting became legal coming in representing 18 to 35-year-olds. So you're absolutely right in saying that a lot of people who are in college or not in college, but get to that point of being 21 and be able to access things like sports wagering online or going to a casino, you haven't really had a lot of education about it or experience or exposure or anything like that. But all you know is everyone's doing it. And I can't watch, the Eagles or the Steelers or America's Funniest Home Videos without seeing a gambling ad during a commercial.
Gambling companies have made a concerted effort in acquiring new customers, often in the form of enticements like free bets. I couldn't even read an article without BetMGM trying to stick one right in the middle of it. One of the ways that gambling companies have staved off critics is by offering self-imposed restrictions.
Some of the states have mandated that there will be cooling off or opt-out lists that say if you have a problem, you can essentially block yourself from receiving promos, but also block yourself from gambling. That you try to log on to DraftKings, and DraftKings should, if you're in that state and you're on the opt-out list, prevent you. There's a number of problems with that. Number one is there were many examples that we found of people who had registered for the opt-out list and we're still allowed to gamble, but we're still being hit with promos, or we found instances of people, some of the states will have not hard and fast, opt out, I will never gamble again, but cooling off periods. So you'll be able to temporarily say okay, 2 weeks, I'm not going to gamble. And the second the 2 weeks is over, they get hit with promos.
And while helplines may help connect patients with healthcare providers, access to good mental health care is already difficult. From your perspective and working with the council, do you feel that we're equipped to handle this rapid expansion of gambling? And even if, 0.5% of people gambling, I don't know what percentage it will be of people that have an addiction, but even if it's a 0.05% of a million people, that's a lot of people. Are we equipped to handle that in Pennsylvania or beyond?
As far as what are we going to see? You're absolutely right. I mean, we've got roughly 13 million people in Pennsylvania. So, you see 0.5%, 1%, 2%, 3%. Most national studies seem to be in that moderate to severe problem is in that 1% to 3% range. And then, that full disorder diagnosis is in that, high, almost at 1%, somewhere in there. Any one of those numbers, even though that percentage is really small, like you mentioned, that's a huge number of people.
So a huge number of people, many of them young, are beginning to gamble. And with it, we may not be able to withstand the sheer quantity of people that are inevitably going to need help for problem gambling. It's clear there needs to be better restrictions on the sports gambling industry, whether it's on the advertising practices or just the infrastructure that's set in place to protect the players. And while states may be enjoying that new influx of tax revenue coming their way, it might be useful to start putting some of that towards mental health services.